He threw acid in his wife's eyes. But what happened next will shake the entire village to its core. A blind woman, betrayed and broken, rises from the ashes, and the truth she uncovers is more shocking than anyone could ever imagine. You won't believe how it ends. In the quiet village of Lokimba, where the river sang and the trees whispered stories of old, Zulia was a light everyone loved. Her face carried a calm smile, and her hands were always helping someone, whether it was a neighbor in need or a child with a scraped knee. People often said the village was blessed because Zulia lived in it. She was wise beyond her years and kind without reason, and at her side was Mandebo, soft-spoken, gentle, and known for crafting the finest tools and furniture in all of Lokimba. Villagers admired them, calling them the perfect couple, blessed by the ancestors. Every morning, Zulia would rise before the sun, sweep their compound, and prepare breakfast while Mandebo polished his tools. They shared quiet laughs and sweet glances that made others envy their bond. On market days, they walked together, side by side, fingers lightly touching. Mandebo often brought her fresh flowers, and Zulia would beam with joy. To the world, he was the ideal husband, loving, hard-working, respectful. Even the elders praised their union, calling it the kind Lokimba needed more of. But Mandebo was not all he appeared to be. In the silence of night, when no one watched, his eyes grew cold. Small things began to change. He grew impatient. He sighed more often. He stared too long at passing women. But Zulia, ever trusting, believed it was just stress. She would sit by him after dinner, rubbing his shoulders and whispering prayers for peace into his ears. One morning, as Zulia handed him water, she smiled and asked if he thought their yam harvest would be good. He looked at her and forced a smile, replying that even the sky was blessed by her presence. Zulia laughed, hugging him tightly. She didn't see the way his eyes darkened the moment she turned. She didn't hear the thoughts in his mind, dark, greedy thoughts brewing quietly, like a storm waiting to tear through a sunny day. While Zulia believed in love, Mandebo was sinking into something else, something cold, something dangerous. He had started listening to the wrong voices, jealous ones, greedy ones, and slowly, that perfect image began to crack, piece by piece. The village saw nothing, Zulia saw nothing, but the storm was already coming. The peace of Lokimba was about to be shattered, and no one, not even the kind-hearted Zulia, could see the pain that waited just beyond the horizon. Days turned into weeks, and something about Mandebo began to change. He no longer greeted Zulia with a smile in the mornings. His hands, once gentle, now slammed doors and tossed tools with anger. He would leave the house before sunrise and return after dark, smelling of strange herbs and perfume Zulia didn't recognize. When she tried to ask if he was all right, he barked at her to mind her chores and stop asking questions. His voice, once soft and loving, now carried a sharp edge that left Zulia in silence. Zulia could feel the distance growing. The warmth they once shared had turned cold, like ashes after a fire. She began to sleep with tears soaking her pillow, confused and hurt. In the market, she noticed women whispering behind her. They glanced at her with pity. She heard a name repeated quietly, Dalifa. At first, she brushed it off, thinking it was nothing, but the whispers grew louder. Dalifa was a new face in Lokimba. She was beautiful in a bold, dangerous way. Her eyes held secrets, and her laughter carried a strange power. Some said she used herbs to charm men. Others claimed she had powers passed down from her mother, a known seductress from the neighboring village. Zulia had never met Dalifa, but she could feel her presence creeping into her home, into Mandebo's heart. One evening, Zulia finally found the courage to ask again. "Mandebo," she said gently, "if I've done something wrong, please tell me. I don't know this version of you." Mandebo looked at her with cold eyes and scoffed. "Not everything is about you, Zulia. Stay out of my way." Then he walked out, slamming the door behind him. Zulia stood still, her heart aching. The man who once held her hands and made promises under the moonlight was slipping away, and she didn't know how to pull him back. Something, or someone, had taken her place in his heart, and the silence between them was growing heavier. The change was no longer just in his words or his actions. It was in his soul, and Zulia feared she was watching the man she loved disappear into darkness. It was a quiet night in Lokimba. The moon hung low, casting pale light over the rooftops. Crickets chirped, unaware of the horror about to unfold. Zulia sat inside the hut, weaving a mat, her mind still heavy with worry. The door creaked open, Mandebo stepped in, his face blank, his hands holding a small gourd filled with liquid that shimmered oddly in the moonlight. Zulia looked up, surprised. "What's that, Mandebo?" she asked, her voice soft, unsure. He stared at her, unmoved. "Justice!" he muttered, his tone empty and cold. Before she could rise, before she could even blink, he flung the contents straight into her face. A horrifying scream tore through the night. Zulia fell back, clutching her face, crying out as the acid seared her skin. Her eyes burned, her cheeks blistered instantly. She writhed on the floor, screaming for help, the pain unbearable, her world turning to darkness. The villagers heard her cries and came running with lanterns and panic. They burst into the hut and found Zulia shaking, her face swollen and covered in burns. She was blind, screaming in agony, begging for water, for help, for answers. Some of the women wept on the spot. Men stood frozen, unable to understand what they were seeing. Mandebo stood to the side, breathing heavily. When they asked what happened, he raised his hand and shouted, "She tried to poison me! She's a witch! I had to protect myself!" Gasps echoed through the hut. A few people looked at each other, confused. Zulia, a witch? The same Zulia who helped raise their children, the woman who prayed for the sick and fed the hungry. But Mandebo's voice was loud and convincing. His face was twisted with fake rage. "She's been poisoning my food. I found herbs under our bed. Dark ones. I had no choice," he cried. Zulia, through her pain, tried to speak. "No, I would never." But her words were lost between sobs and screams. Chaos broke out. Some rushed to get the village healer. Others held Zulia gently, trying not to touch her wounds. The truth was unclear, but one thing was certain. Zulia's life had just changed forever, and the peaceful village of Lakimba would never be the same again. Zulia lay in the dirt, her face a mass of burns and blisters. Her world had gone dark, and the pain she felt was unimaginable. As the villagers rushed to help, they carried her to Elder Tanari, the wise healer who lived by the Rolua River. Tanari was known for her strange powers, for being able to heal wounds that others couldn't even touch. But what could she do for Zulia now? Zulia was barely conscious, her breath shallow and rapid, her face so swollen she could no longer recognize herself. When Tanari saw her, her heart ached, but she didn't show it. "You are not done, child," she whispered softly, cradling Zulia's head in her hands. "You were chosen for more." Zulia's heart shattered as she cried, her voice broken with despair. "But how can I live like this?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "How will I see again?" Tanari's hand gently brushed Zulia's hair back from her forehead. "Eyes do not always see truth," she said, her voice calm and steady. "The spirit does." Zulia didn't understand. Her heart felt hollow, like a part of her soul had been ripped out. The world she once knew, the life, the love, was gone, and now she had nothing. She wanted her sight back. She wanted to see Mandebo's face, to know the truth. How could she move forward in this world of darkness? But Tanari was patient. She took Zulia in, treating her wounds and feeding her nourishing soups and herbs. Zulia couldn't see, but she could feel the healing energy surrounding her, feel the peace that came from Tanari's presence. Days turned into weeks, and although Zulia couldn't see her own reflection, she began to notice something shifting inside her. It was a quiet strength, an inner power that she had never felt before. As Tanari worked her magic, Zulia's body healed slowly, but her heart grew stronger with every passing day. Tanari never asked her to forget her past. Instead, she taught Zulia how to find strength in the spirit, the one thing no one could take away from her. Slowly, Zulia began to understand. Eyes may be blind, but the soul can still see. It could still feel the truth, even when everything else was lost. She might not see the world again in the way she once had, but she would learn to see through a new kind of vision, one that went beyond the physical, beyond the pain. Tanari's words echoed in her mind. The spirit sees what the eyes cannot. As the days turned into months, Zulia's body slowly healed under Elder Tanari's care, but her journey was far from over. One evening, as she sat near the edge of the sacred Rolua River, the wind carrying the scent of earth and water, Zulia felt something stir deep within her, a whisper. At first, she thought it was just her imagination, but the voice grew clearer. "Zulia." The voice was soft, ancient, like it had been carried on the wind for centuries. "Truth sleeps in darkness. Wake it." Zulia's heart raced as the whisper echoed in her mind. It wasn't a voice she could see, but it was as real as anything she had ever known. It came from the river itself, the sacred Rolowa River, which was said to hold the spirits of ancestors who guided the living. Tanari had spoken of it, but Zulia had never truly believed in its power until now. The voice urged her to wake up, to look beyond her blindness, to see the truth hidden in the shadows of her pain. Zulia began to understand. Her eyes may no longer work, but the spirits had awakened something deeper inside her. The voice called her to listen with her soul, to sense the truth that lay beyond the surface. In the following weeks, Zulia spent more time by the river, listening to its whispers. Tanari taught her how to channel her senses, how to listen to the world in a way that was beyond sight. Zulia learned to hear the lies that hid in people's words, to feel the weight of emotions that others tried to hide. It was as though her spirit had unlocked a new world, one that she had never noticed before. She could sense the guilt in Mandebo's heart when he spoke of her, the anger that burned inside him whenever he mentioned her name. She could feel the jealousy in Dalifa's actions and the cruelty hidden in the whispers of those around her. It was as though she had gained the ability to read souls, no longer dependent on her eyes, but seeing with her spirit. Zulia's strength grew, and with it, her understanding of the world deepened. The more she practiced, the more she saw the truth behind the masks people wore. Her blindness had not been a curse, but a gift, a way to see through the lies, to uncover what others could not. The river's whispers became her guide, the ancestors' voices teaching her not just to survive, but to uncover the hidden truths that would bring her justice. Zulia was no longer a broken woman. She was a force, stronger than she had ever been before, ready to face the man who had destroyed her and reveal the truth that had been hidden in darkness for far too long. Under Tanari's guidance, Zulia began a new journey, one that would transform her into a woman she had never imagined. Every day, Tanari took her deeper into the ancient teachings of the Rolowa path, a sacred form of spiritual sight that was passed down only to those chosen by the river spirits. It wasn't a sight of the eyes, but one of the soul, a vision that allowed Zulia to perceive the truth hidden within others' hearts. The training was intense. Tanari pushed Zulia to her limits, making her confront not just the physical pain of her injuries, but the emotional scars as well. She taught Zulia how to focus her mind, how to clear away the noise of the world, and listen to the whispers of the spirits. Every day, Zulia grew stronger, learning to read the energy around her and to sense the intentions of the people she encountered. At first, it was difficult for Zulia to trust in the power of her new abilities. She was used to the world being clear, with her eyes providing the answers. But as Tanari guided her through the rituals of the Rolowa path, Zulia began to feel a connection to something deeper, something beyond the material world. Her spirit began to see what her eyes could no longer grasp. One evening, after a long day of practice, Zulia sat by the river, feeling the cool breeze on her face. She closed her eyes and focused, letting the sounds of the river fill her mind. And then, it happened. She felt a sharp pull, a truth she hadn't expected. She could feel Mandebo's presence in her thoughts, even from so far away. She could hear his lies, the guilt that wrapped around him like chains. It was overwhelming, but it was undeniable. "I feel Mandebo's lies," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I hear his guilt. I must return." Tanari, who had been standing nearby, nodded calmly. "When the drums of truth beat, you shall stand," she said, her voice steady and wise. "Your time is coming, Zulia. You will return, not just for revenge, but to reveal the truth that has been hidden for far too long." Zulia's heart raced as she realized what Tanari meant. It wasn't just about confronting Mandebo. It was about exposing the lies that had consumed her life, about standing up for herself and the truth. The Rolowa path had given her the strength and vision to do it, to see the world in a way that no one else could. Zulia stood up, feeling a newfound confidence fill her chest. She wasn't the broken woman who had been blinded by acid anymore. She was a warrior, armed with the truth and the power of the river. Mandebo wouldn't be able to hide anymore. The drums of truth were starting to beat, and Zulia was ready to stand. In the village of Lokimba, Mandebo's life had taken a dark turn. With Dalifa by his side, he now walked the streets as though he had won, leaving Zulia behind as nothing more than a distant memory. He claimed Zulia was a cursed witch, spreading lies to erase her name from the village's heart. Mandebo had taken her lands, her property, everything that was once hers, now under his control. Dalifa, her eyes glinting with malice, stood by his side, a constant reminder of the betrayal Zulia had suffered. "She was weak," Dalifa would say with a smirk. You deserve more, Mandebo. The village will soon see it. Mandebo, full of newfound arrogance, nodded, his face twisted in greed. Soon, the whole village will forget she ever existed, he boasted, believing that the lies he told would erase all traces of his past with Zulia, the power of her lands, her wealth. It was all his now. And with Dalifa at his side, he thought he had everything he needed to move forward, to build a life of luxury and control. But Mandebo's arrogance blinded him to one crucial fact. The spirits had not forgotten Zulia. The Rolua River, the ancestors, and the unseen forces of nature had been watching, waiting for the moment when truth would rise and shatter his world. Zulia had been blind, but she was not weak. The path she had walked had prepared her for this moment. Mandebo's betrayal, his greed, and his affair with Dalifa had not gone unnoticed by the spirits of the land. Every lie he told, every claim he made, added weight to the burden he would soon bear. Mandebo's desires for power and wealth would be his downfall, and the spirits would make sure of it. Zulia's time was coming, and Mandebo would soon learn that no amount of lies could cover the truth that was already unfolding around him. The village of Lokimba, which had once followed his every word, would soon see him for what he truly was, a man driven by greed and deceit. The spirits had not forgotten Zulia, and they would not let her story be erased so easily. A year had passed since Mandebo had cast Zulia aside, and now the village of Lokimba was preparing for the Festival of Truth, a time when the villagers would come together to share secrets, celebrate honesty, and face the truths they had hidden. The air was thick with excitement as the festival drums echoed across the village, but suddenly they stopped. The crowd fell silent, all eyes turning toward the entrance. A woman in a long, flowing veil appeared at the edge of the crowd. Her presence was mysterious, her face hidden from view. The villagers whispered amongst themselves, trying to make sense of the stranger who had arrived at such a significant moment. Who is that?" a villager asked, his voice trembling with curiosity. The woman slowly lifted her veil, revealing the face of Zulia, her eyes still empty, but filled with a powerful determination. She stood tall, her presence commanding the attention of everyone around her. The silence in the village deepened, and Zulia's voice rang out clear and strong. "I am Zulia, and I have returned." Gasps filled the air. Shock spread like wildfire through the crowd. For a moment, it felt as if time itself had frozen. Mandebo, who had been enjoying the celebration, turned pale, his face draining of color, as he realized who had entered the village. He tried to steady himself, but the truth was undeniable. Zulia was here, standing before him, and he knew his world was about to crumble. "She's a ghost! She's evil!" Mandebo shouted, his voice shaking with fear and anger. He tried to turn the villagers against her, to protect the lies he had built his life on, but the crowd wasn't buying it. The more Mandebo screamed, the more the truth seemed to weigh on him. Zulia stepped forward, her heart steady, her spirit unshaken by Mandebo's accusations. She had lived through hell, had survived when they thought she would crumble, but now she was stronger than ever, and she would let nothing stand in her way. "Let the spirits decide," she said calmly, her voice unwavering. In that moment, the ground beneath them seemed to tremble. The air felt charged with a presence, as though the spirits of the land were listening, waiting for the truth to unfold. The villagers were silent, caught between fear and awe, watching as Zulia, once broken, now stood before them as a force of nature. Mandebo's lies, his cruelty, and his greed could no longer shield him. The Festival of Truth was not just a celebration, it was a reckoning. Zulia had returned, and the world would know the truth. The village gathered by the sacred river Rolua for the spirit trial. The elders, solemn and wise, stood in a circle, their eyes focused on Zulia, who sat in the center, her head bowed in quiet strength. She had returned to face the man who had destroyed her life, but now, with the spirits of the land on her side, she was ready to expose the truth. Mandebo was called forward, his steps heavy with guilt, but his pride still clinging to him. Zulia, her voice calm and steady, spoke to the river. "Let the river speak," she said, as though commanding the very elements to reveal what had been hidden for so long. The river, usually peaceful and clear, began to stir. The waters darkened, swirling with an unnatural force, as the winds howled through the trees. The villagers gasped, eyes wide in awe and fear. Then, from the depths of the river, a voice rose, an ancient, powerful voice that echoed across the land. "Mandebo!" The The name stretched, vibrating in the air. You threw acid, not in fear, but in greed. The crowd gasped in shock. Mandebo's face turned pale, the truth echoing in the depths of the river like a thunderclap. His heart raced as he tried to fight the reality that was unfolding before him. The spirit's voice continued, cutting through the silence. Dalifa promised gold. You wanted Zulia's lands. You lied. The truth, so long buried beneath his lies and deceit, was now laid bare for all to see. Mandebo's knees buckled, and he fell to the ground in disbelief. His chest tightened as the weight of his actions crushed him. He had done it all for greed, had thrown acid in Zulia's face to take her land and her wealth, all while using Dalifa's promises of gold to fuel his desires. Dalifa, who had been standing beside Mandebo, turned pale. She tried to run, her footsteps frantic and desperate, but the river, now alive with the fury of the spirits, rose up in a wave and swallowed her whole. The villagers watched in stunned silence as she disappeared into the depths, her fate sealed by her own treachery. Mandebo, alone now, his heart shattered by the truth, fell to his knees. Tears welled up in his eyes, and his voice broke as he cried out, "Forgive me! I was blinded by greed." But no one answered. The villagers, once so loyal to him, now looked at him with disdain. Zulia, calm and resolute, watched as the man who had betrayed her was left broken by the power of the river's truth. The spirit trial had shown the world what he had done, and now Mandebo had to face the consequences of his actions. After the spirit trial, the elders made their final decision. Mandebo, broken and defeated, was sentenced to a life of isolation. They banished him to the caves of Nuba, a place feared by all. It was said that no man ever returned from those dark, haunted caves. His fate was sealed, and the villagers no longer spoke of him with the same respect they once had. The truth, like a powerful storm, had swept away everything he once held dear. Zulia, though blind, had gained a new kind of sight, the kind that pierced through lies and deceit. Her heart, now full of wisdom, guided her as she stood before the elders. With grace and dignity, they made her the keeper of the Rolua spirit, a title that held great power and respect. Her blindness had never been a weakness. In fact, it had become her greatest strength. The villagers whispered in awe, "She cannot see, but she sees more than all of us." Zulia's ability to understand the world beyond what the eye could see made her a revered leader. Her spirit, strong and unwavering, was a beacon of hope for the people of Lokimba. But Zulia didn't stop there. She used her newfound power to teach others the lessons she had learned in the darkness of the river's whispers. She built a school, a place where people could come to learn the ancient art of spirit healing. Here, she taught the villagers how to truly see, how to listen to the whispers of the wind, feel the emotions hidden beneath the surface, and recognize the truth that lay beyond the visible world. Her school became a sanctuary for those seeking wisdom, and the village of Lokimba flourished under her guidance. People traveled from far and wide to learn from the woman who had survived the cruelty of Mandebo, only to rise stronger than ever. Her name became synonymous with strength, wisdom, and the power of truth. As time passed, the village never forgot Zulia, the woman whose eyes had been taken, but whose vision had shaken the earth. She had proven that you can take a person's sight, but never their truth. And in the end, it was truth that spoke louder than any lie. Zulia's legacy was immortalized in the hearts of the people. They knew that as long as they had the Rolua spirit and Zulia's teachings, they could face any darkness that came their way. And so, Zulia's rise to power was not just the rise of a woman, but the rise of truth itself, a force that no one, not even Mandebo, could ever destroy. Zulia's story is a powerful reminder that no matter how much darkness tries to blind us, the truth always finds a way to shine through. Her strength, wisdom, and resilience teach us that no one can take away our spirit or our truth. She rose from the ashes of betrayal and cruelty, becoming a beacon of hope for all. If Zulia's journey has touched your heart, if you believe that truth is the most powerful force in this world, then share her story with others. Every like, every share, and every subscription helps spread her message of strength, courage, and justice. By supporting this channel, you're helping more people learn from stories that inspire and change lives. So, if you haven't already, don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel for more stories like Zulia. Thank you for watching, and thank you for being part of this community where truth, resilience, and love shine brighter than any darkness. Together, we can inspire a world full of strength and hope. Stay strong, stay true, and never forget that the truth will always set you free.